Hello everyone, and welcome to another beer review. Now, what we're doing today is the last of the kind of like low alcohol or non-alcoholic beers. But to be totally honest, they've been really quite miss. We've had one kind of hit, but it's not even really my kind of type of beer that I go for anyway. So for me it was a hit, but also a miss. The problem with today's one is it's one of the type of beers I try to avoid reviewing, and unfortunately I'm going to have to do it. I can't really avoid it. The reason why I have been avoiding it is because a lot of people might not like what I have to say, because I am honest. I don't really... Wait a minute here. Beer machine keeps going off in the background. Oh, you pain in the backside. Where are you? Where's the button? There we go. Right, back again. A lot of people might not like what I have to say, because I am honest about my reviews, and I will call it as I basically see it or taste it. I don't have any preconceptions. I don't have any kind of allegiances. If I taste it and I like it, then great. If I taste it and I don't like it, regardless of if I've had it before and I thought it was okay before or whatever, it's what I taste on the day, and if it's not good, then I'm going to say it's not good. Simple as that. Also, if I don't particularly like the environment created around a product, if I feel it's overhyped or it's pushed in people's faces or claimed to be something that it really isn't, then again, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to say if it's a load of bollocks, it's a load of bollocks. If it's a load of bullshit, then I will say it's bullshit. Now, the problem is, with this one, there's a lot of hype round about it, and I'll be totally honest, there's also a hell of a lot of bullshit that comes with it. So what we're doing today is the Guinness Draught. And we're also doing the Guinness Draught 0.0, which is a bit strange, because if you actually read the spiel on the side of it, then it can contain a bit more than 0.0, supposedly. But anyway, so yes, but it's 0.0% by alcohol volume, although it does say it contains not more than 0.05%, but they only went to 1 decimal point, so they're okay, they're covered. Right, so it's not completely alcohol free, because it's probably very, very difficult, but yes, the amount of alcohol is negligible. Now the problem is, well, they're both the draft version, so they've both got a kind of a nitrous CO2 widget in it. Some do it with just the nitrogen gas in the widget, some do it as a mix. It all depends how they want to do it. I don't know which way they do it, but I grew up in the southwest of Scotland, where Guinness was quite a popular drink. In fact, quite a few Irish drinks were quite popular. Murphy's was also very popular as well during that time. And I'll be totally honest, I actually used to prefer the Murphy's to the Guinness. But I used to treat Guinness like McDonald's. If you went into a kind of foreign country and you're kind of looking at kind of some of the stuff, you think, well, for safety reasons, we'll maybe go for McDonald's on the first night, just to kind of make sure everybody has something to eat, you know, and are kind of comfortable, and then we'll start to kind of branch out and try some of the local fare. It was the same when you used to go into kind of different pubs in different countries. You think, well, what should I go for? And until you really kind of get a better understanding, right, I'll maybe grab a pint of Guinness. I've got Guinness on draft. I'll grab a Guinness just now. It's a bit like McDonald's. It's nothing great, it's consistent, nothing great, but it'll do just now until I kind of maybe speak with some of the locals or speak with the barman and just get a better understanding of what's really on offer and what they really are, and that type of thing. So that's how I used to treat Guinness, and a lot of people put a lot of mistaken hype about how to pour it and putting a shamrock on it. You know, it's like baristas for beer. You're thinking, seriously? If the beer was that bloody good, you wouldn't need all that tomfoolery, you know, from that point of view. I don't see people turning around with other really good beers and saying, would you like me to try and put a little shamrock on that for you? No, I fucking wouldn't. Just give me the bloody beer I've paid for and stop fucking about with it. That's the kind of normal reaction. So again, We'll see how it goes. And also, quickly before I start, there's a lot of hype that I used to get and hear over the years that, oh yes, the Dublin Guinness is far better than the London Guinness. It's a big difference now that the London brewery shut down and you're only getting the Dublin Guinness. It's far, far better. Well, going by the water that they use in Dublin, going by what Guinness actually say themselves, and they get it from the Wicklow Mountains, it's a very soft water. So soft water isn't actually good for brewing stouts. That's why London was more famous for brewing stouts than Dublin. Although Dublin likes to give you all that hype, the kind of high, hard calcium carbonate content water is actually far better for doing porters and stouts, and that's why London was a lot more famous for it, and also brewed a lot more different types. So there you go. So to turn around and say that London Guinness was never as good as the Dublin Guinness, well, I'm going to call that out as being absolute bullshit. So there you go. Unless they're adding something to the Dublin Guinness that they weren't adding to the London Guinness, and then alarm bells will start ringing why they're not using the same recipe. So anyway, let's crack this open and see what they're like. Is there any spiel on it? Not really. I think every other spiel has been said before. Although there is something here, right? There is no ingredients on the original Draught can, but there is ingredients on the 0.0 version, which says ingredients: water, malted barley, roasted barley, fructose, natural flavourings, which always gets my alarm bells ringing, because what do you mean by natural flavourings? If they're natural flavourings, then name them. Don't just say, oh well, it's natural flavourings, but we're not going to tell you what they are. Well, that's fucking weird, isn't it? And then, of course, nitrogen and hops, because they go well together, isn't it? Have you done the nitrogen yet? No, wait for the hops. We got the hops ready first. But apparently, I hope to God they don't put them in that order. Right, but yeah. So, but you don't get anything in the original. So I'm going to pour the original first, and I'm going to go with, let that settle, and just see what it's like. And then people say, oh, but you should pour it this way, and you should pour it that way, you know. Oh, you're not pouring it right, because that makes a huge difference to it. Oh, it hasn't settled properly. Never got that with the Murphys though. Strange though. Just look. I'll be totally honest. I really can't be bothered with all the nonsense. So we'll let that settle, and we'll pour the 0.0, and I'll pour it the same way. I'll pour it to a certain degrees, you know, and then basically bring it up, because it makes all the difference, Joe. Makes all the difference. In fact, did Guinness not come out with that old, really over-expensive, overhyped kind of draft system with that kind of special cans? Yeah, I've seen that. Been reviewed a few times on YouTube, thinking, that was a lot of palaver and overpriced piss, doesn't it? Anyway, so what we'll do is we'll let them settle. It's almost kind of settled. So there's the original. Living the dream, this. Living the dream. And there's the 0. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll start with the 0 first. So I will. What do I smell? I smell a little bit of malt, bit of kind of roasted malts. That's it. Yeah, maybe a little bit of kind of the bitter molasses. Getting a teeny bit of that. That's what I'm getting as a smell. Let's see what the original smells of. The kind of same smells, exactly the same smells. So I'm getting ever so slight, the kind of bitter side of molasses, that kind of burnt smell that you get from molasses. And yeah, you're getting a lot of dark roasted malt flavours or aromas. So that's it. And they both smell exactly the same, and they've both got the same type of intensity of aromas as well, so that's kind of quite interesting. So, let's start off with a 0.0. Seems quite sweet. And when I say sweet, I'm not saying it's really, really sweet, but there is a sweetness to it that you wouldn't normally expect in a stout. But I wouldn't say it's sweet, but there is a sweetness there, more than you would probably get in a normal stout. What is also lacking is it doesn't really have that kind of bitter edge in the aftertaste. You should really get that kind of slightly bitter sour kind of flavour in the aftertaste, and it's not there. In fact, it's quite a light, slightly sweetish aftertaste. It's strange. It's like, you know when you have an Irish coffee, and I've always found this with Irish coffees, and I've got nothing against Irish people. I used to basically spend quite a lot of time in Ireland with work and that type of stuff, and some of the people or some of the pubs I used to go into in the Swords Road and watch the kind of, have a pint with the kind of more traditional Irish drinkers, most of them wouldn't touch this Draught kind of nitrogen pour nonsense. We'd call that the tourist drink. They would drink the flat stuff in the brown bottles, big brown bottles. The ones that most of the time didn't even come with a label on them. It was just kind of embossed in the actual glass bottle. There was no real label, just like Guinness Original on it, and that was it. There was also the people that used to basically drink the dual pour porters, Irish porters. So basically the first part of the pour was the flat, and then they would actually give you the actual carbonated as the second part of the pour, and that's how they used to pour it. So that was the kind of main traditional kind of drinks that they had in Dublin and the kind of surrounding area. So they used to class this as the tourist drink. But when I was saying about the Irish coffee, is an Irish coffee is that the whiskey kind of takes the edge off the coffee flavour, and the coffee flavour takes the edge off the whiskey flavour. So you're not really getting the chance to enjoy the whiskey, and you're not really getting a chance to really enjoy the coffee. It's like mix them together, and yeah, I suppose what they make is all right. But for me, I would prefer the whiskey on its own, or I would prefer the coffee on its own. The cream, well, I can live without either, from that point of view. I don't need cream in my whiskey, and I don't need cream in my coffee from that point of view, but that's what I find, and I think this is a bit similar from that point of view. It's got, no, it really is. It's too light for a start. It's just too light, and because you start off, you get that kind of the dark roasted malts to start with, and there's a bit of sweetness at the front of the mouth. You move on to the mid tongue, and yeah, you're just getting that kind of like malt flavours. The roasted malts kind of died down. The sweetness is still there. The malty sweetness is still there, but you're just getting a little bit of malt, a little bit of grain, and ever so slightly the slight roasted kind of feel to it. And then it moves on to the kind of aftertaste, and yeah, I suppose you're getting ever so slight hints of burnt molasses. So you're getting a little bit of bitterness, just a little bit. But the sweetness is still there, and you're just getting the kind of tail off of the kind of dark roasted malts and the roasted kind of barley. That's really what you're kind of getting. So there is no real sour or bitterness to the aftertaste. The sweetness, I would probably say it's there too long. Mouthfeel is okay. I mean, it's what we call a soft mouthfeel because it's a nitrogen kind of drink. So there's a slight false kind of creaminess to it, which has got nothing really to do with the beer so much, because it's enhanced by the nitrogen in it. which gives that kind of creamy texture to the mouthfeel. If you try, obviously, the kind of original kind of Guinness from the bottles, then of course you don't really get that sensation. I always found, as a few Irish people used to say, was the people that drink the tourist drink, because they don't really like the taste of Guinness. So it's like kind of toned back a bit, and it's lightened up by the kind of the nitrogen, and they like all the hype and the mystique that goes with it. Which is true. I think it's more of a trend which has gone on for a long time, but it doesn't really kind of enhance the beer. So let's try the original. That's what I always found with Guinness. I find it bland. I mean, let's be totally honest, for a stout, it's quite weak. Quite bland in flavour. And a lot of people might think, because I've discussed this with other people over the years, that people think that maybe Guinness has toned down the flavours over the years and adjusted the recipe and made it more palatable for more people and maybe not as strong. I don't think they have. I think it's because as we've went on in life and we've tried lots of other different kind of stouts and different kind of dark ales and porters and everything else, that we've realised that the more kind of traditional flavour profiles for these beers is actually a lot stronger than what you get in this glass. And I think that's probably why I preferred the Murphy's. Murphy's had a little bit more sweetness to it, but it also had a little bit more bitterness to it as well. I always preferred the Murphy's. Between the two of these types of drinks, I would probably say there's a lot of other stouts and porters I would probably prefer even over the Murphy's and especially over the Guinness. I just found that the Irish stouts were a bit lacking in flavour and character, and when you have to actually add kind of nitrogen to kind of help kind of make the body a bit more robust and kind of support it, you're thinking, yeah. This isn't as sweet as this. This is the zero. So the zero is a bit sweeter, but the flavour profiles are actually quite similar. You're probably getting a little bit more bitterness in the aftertaste of this, but it's not much. But you are getting more because when I say you're getting more, you might not actually be getting more, but it feels like you're getting more because the sweetness really isn't there in the aftertaste. Everything else is basically the same. You start off with a bit of sweetness, and the dark roasted malts moves on to the kind of mid-term. Again, the kind of dark roasted malts have kind of died down a bit. You got a little bit of that kind of grainy, a little bit of slight roasted barley. The sweetness is kind of slightly kind of dissipating and lessened as well, so it's less sweet. So it's a kind of a slightly more bitter drink in the mid-tongue than it is with the 0.0. And again, when it moves on to the kind of aftertaste, because that sweetness isn't there, you're probably getting or noticing more of the kind of slightly bitter tones. You know, a bit like the kind of burnt sugar, burnt molasses type scenario, and the kind of coming from the kind of roasted kind of grains, that kind of slight bitterness coming from there as well. So you're really getting, again, you're not really getting any kind of hops. I mean, you maybe get some bitterness from the hops, but because they're not really that bitter, I don't think they're really putting the hops in there to really kind of get the bitterness like a lot of, you know, brewers would do. They really want the head more. The head more is the big thing. So of course, if you can get the right phenols in from the hops to help promote head retention, and then of course it's backed up by the nitrogen in there as well, then of course that's what's more important. I think the head is more important to Guinness than the actual flavour, because that's what it feels like. So they're actually quite close. So my view, if you like the Guinness, then the 0.0 is probably right up your street. slightly sweeter, but they are quite close, surprisingly enough. They actually are quite close. They're not really that far away from that point of view. So it probably is a good alternative if you want, if you usually drink kind of Guinness and you want to have a beer but you're driving, or you don't want to take the alcohol, then that is another option. So it's actually not too bad. So I think if you take it from the original, they actually are fairly close. So this is probably the closest we've had and the better kind of trade up. So out of 10, what would I give it? The original, what would I give it out of 10? If you don't take all the hype and all the nonsense in it, then I would probably say I'd give it maybe a 4, maybe a 3 or a 4, because it's not really that great a stout. Let's be totally honest. It's quite bland and it's lacking in flavour. Let's be totally honest. But with all the hype and the mystique and everything else and all that type of stuff, I think that probably brings it up to me to be a kind of average or just slightly below average for a stout. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10, because let's be totally honest, for a stout it really isn't that great. Now I know a lot of people won't like what I'm saying, but it's how I feel and how a lot of people feel, surprisingly enough, including quite a lot of Irish. You think it's not really that great. In fact, a lot of them now, as like that used to remember the kind of traditional Irish porters, would say the traditional Irish porters are far better than this. So there you go. So yeah, so I'll give that a 4. This, well, as a stout, you do tend that you get straight sweetness straight away. For a stout, I would probably say this is the same. It probably is a bit more sweeter, and of course it's slightly lacking in the bitterness and the aftertaste. So as a stout, I would probably give this a 3. But if I treat it like a non-alcoholic beer, then it's very, very close to the original, not really that far away from that point of view. So on that basis, I'm going to actually give it a 7. For a non-alcoholic beer, I'm going to give it a 7, because it actually is very close to the original, apart from it's a bit sweeter and it kind of detracts in the kind of bitterness and the aftertaste. But in general, I wouldn't say it's any way or any kind of point of being unpleasant compared to the original. Because it's so close to the original, I think they're both kind of not really that far away from each other. So if you enjoy one, you're probably really going to enjoy the other. If you want something with more stronger stout flavours and something that's got more bitterness to it and everything else, then first question is, why the hell are you drinking Guinness? So let's be totally honest, if you were, you wouldn't be drinking this stuff, would you? And when I'm saying Guinness, I'm talking about the Guinness Draught stuff. I'm not talking about other forms of Guinness. We'll have a look at them, we'll try them out, but I class them as a separate drink just because they're made by the same company or they have the same name. I don't see them as the same drink, so I don't. So I'm talking about all the kind of draft stuff you get, whether you're getting it in the cans or you're actually getting it from the actual tap, whether it's extra cold nonsense or 0.0 in the draft cans or the original in the draft cans or the original from the tap. I class that all as the same kind of beer, and that's what I class as the kind of Guinness Draught. And to be totally honest, if you're into stouts, then you don't really drink Guinness Draught. Let's be totally honest, because it's not the best. So there we go. People might not like what I've said, but tough. It's the truth, and it's definitely how I feel anyway. And some people will agree, some people won't agree. But that's us for this review. Thanks for watching. Cheers, and bye for now.